Welcome to an episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Brandon Cobb. Brandon was a former medical device sales rep before becoming a fund manager and a land development coach. His firm, HBG Capital, manages over $20 million of annual land development. So, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the Global Investors Show.
Hey, thanks for allowing me to be here. The pleasure's all mine.
So you are in land development. We don't have too many people that come on talking about land development, but before we get into kind of how that works and what you're doing there, give us a little bit more of a background on how you actually got into land development or real estate investing and then land development.
Yeah, so medical device rep turned real estate entrepreneur is it in one sentence, right? But I am not what you would call a natural entrepreneur. I'm what you would call an accidental entrepreneur. I don't have some story where I worked a corporate career for decades. I have some dream of quitting and doing it. No, my dream job was medical device sales. And it took me years to break into that industry. The allure of being able to rub shoulders with successful orthopedic surgeons, actually sell a product that I believed in that was making a difference in patients' lives. Like that was what really motivated me. So when I was really young and I was just getting out of school, just like all the young bucks out there, the only thing I wanted to do was make a lot of money and make my parents proud. Like that was it. And so I went down this path of go get a nice W-2, did exactly what my parents said, saved my money, invested and just had my nose at the grindstone. And then one sunny Friday afternoon, my boss says, hey, meet me over at the Starbucks in West End, 5 o'clock when you get off. And I was pumped to meet this guy. My boss, for reference, was a mentor of mine. I considered him a father figure. It took me years to break into medical device sales. And he was the guy that gave me a shot. So I had a tremendous amount of respect for this man. And again, father figure. And I was having a phenomenal day as a rep. Best day you could possibly happen. And I remember pulling up to the Starbucks. It was Friday. It was in June, so summer was in full swing. You could smell the coffee. Sun was going down. And before I could tell him how much money I'd made him that day, he fires me. And it took a few hours for the shock to really cook in. I'm like, my gosh, did I really just get fired? This is my dream job. This is my passion. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. And it's gone. And, for whatever reason, it was the best thing to let me go that day. And I learned a very, very valuable lesson, which is nobody was going to look out for my financial well-being but me. You can be as loyal as you want to a company, climb the corporate ladder. You're just one restructuring or one acquisition away from being let go. And so that was a very important lesson that I learned. Nobody was going to look out for my financial well-being but me. So luckily I had, saved a little bit of money and was living well below my means. I wasn't married, didn't have any kids. And I said, let's give this entrepreneur thing a shot. So I said, well, what am I good at? Well, I've got a lot of people that reached out to me about breaking in medical device sales. Maybe I train people how to do that. So I created a course, launched it, all that. Failed. I was like, well, I'm really into the motivational stuff. I'll start an online blog about motivation and that kind of stuff. Failed. I was like, well, I really like Tony Robbins. I'm into that. And, I want to be a life coach. So I tried the life coach thing. Charles, you're not going to believe this. Nobody wants to take life advice from a 27-year-old. So that fell. Then I discovered this vehicle called real estate. And that was the first venture that I actually made money in. And I literally just cut off everything else. And I poured my heart and soul into that. I sold all my retirement accounts to buy my first flip. I started flipping houses. By the way, if you're listening to this, don't do that. Do not do that. Do not sell all your retirement accounts and do that. I was young, didn't know any better. Very stupid. But that's the catalyst that started my entrepreneur journey in my business. I gave myself a 6-month ultimatum to make some money. I beat that ultimatum by about 7 days. I made about $30,000 on this house that I flipped. And I took that money, I just dumped it back into the business. If anybody's seen the scene off of Batman where the Joker slides down the big pile of money and lights it on fire in front of the mafia, that's what I was doing with marketing dollars. And so that money led to me doing, 5 or 6 more deals. And then I took that money and I dumped it right back into the business in form of marketing and hiring. And that produced 10, 15 deals. And then I just kept dumping money back into the business until I had built up a house flipping business that was doing about 35, 40 deals per year. We vertically integrated. We had the construction company because we couldn't find any good GCs out there. We started raising private money because hard money was too expensive. We're never going to be able to grow this business when over half of our monthly payments are hard money interest. So we started HBG Capital and started raising capital from investors. And then we had one opportunity where the home was fire damaged. The whole second floor was crispy, but the first floor was in pretty good shape. And I knew the foundation worked and we could buy it for less than what the land was worth. And we're like, this has got to be a good deal. And by this point, we'd done some full gut rehabs and, weren't scared of some really deep rehab. And we bought that deal and we consider that our first new build. And we rebuilt that home and made 3 times the amount of money as a rehab we were doing around the street. And we did it in less time. That was the light bulb moment. We're like, why are we flipping houses? We need to go into new builds. And being a GC, we didn't have to hire that out. Like, we were able to make deals out of stuff that other people couldn't because we were a vertically integrated firm. So we started building lots of houses, and that's real expensive. We started scaling HBG Capital. We started syndicating, which that was like when I discovered syndication, like the light bulb went off, right? I was really able to crowdfund a lot of capital together and start building all these homes. And that went really well for a while. And we said, well, we need to really grow this company. How do we do this? We're tired of chasing these little bitty, itty bitty new builds where you tear one house and you put 2 in its place. We need to go after parcels of land that we can do 30, 40, 50, 100 homes. And that's what we started doing. And we started developing all this land. And all of a sudden we get boom, 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 a knock on the door. Hey, who is it? Well, it's a national home builder. We want to buy your land. Sorry, not for sale. Get lost. Well, what if we offered you this for it? And my partner and I looked at each other, looked at the offer, looked at each other, looked at the offer and go, this is for sale. You can have it. And we were going to do the one across the street. Do you want that one as well? And we learned that Wall Street has to buy land in order to grow. They're a publicly traded company. They don't have any plan B. It is just to buy more, build more, and grow. Stock price must go up. And if stock price don't go up, that's a problem. And they're building for 30, 40% less than what it costs us because they have these massive, massive purchasing power, and they can pass that purchasing power onto us in the land. In other words, they can buy the land for a lot more than we can because of their purchasing power. And so that equity, they just pass it along to us. So we started taking land, getting entitled and selling it, getting land developed and selling it to national home builders. And so today here at HBG Capital, we focus on inventing new housing neighborhoods for first-time home buyers.
Oh. Yeah, and the other thing too with that is they don't want to waste the time of doing what you're doing. They want something that's pretty much, for lack of a better word, turnkey, you know what I mean? Where they can come in and they can start putting up houses right away. And then even if they pay more for it, I don't think they really care if that situation, if they're going to be able to sell them at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They want to build. They're not in the development game. They have to do development right now because there's not enough developers out there. And again, they have to do it. So they're sort of forced to do a lot of self-development, but it's created a huge opportunity for those that do understand this niche, can execute on it, and can actually deliver finished, ready to sell lots to them, or take it through the entire approval process and deliver them ready to develop land.
Nice. Okay, so let's break down a little bit further of kind of what you guys do in your investment strategy. Like, let's start from the beginning of where you're identifying these land parcels that can benefit from entry-level housing, which I imagine is what the goal is of what you're building here. They're not really custom houses because you're selling them to nationwide builders.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's 3 phases. Phase 1 is called the entitlement phase. You're just getting the paper approved and you're selling it to an end buyer. The second phase is we're actually going to do construction. This is where we grade the site out. We install the roads. We put the infrastructure in, right? You make a neighborhood without any homes on it. That's phase 2. And then phase 3 is actually building the homes. Now, we came in it from a builder. That's how we got into this industry. Right now, we're just flipping paper and we're developing and selling lots. Those are the 2 things that we're doing right now. And the reason why, I personally love development is because I have multiple exit strategies and I have multiple opportunities to force appreciate the value of the property. If you are, flipping house, you have to buy it, put the money into it, and the value is created after it's fixed up. If it's a multifamily unit, similar, you got to renovate the units, force increase the rents, get the NOI up, and then you force increase it after you've purchased it. What I love about this is we put the property under contract. We line up our buyer during our due diligence period, and then we take it through the process. and it's under contract the entire time, meaning we don't have to buy the land. The reason we do that, it removes the risk. We only buy that thing once all the approvals are in place. So we get it to a point where we've mitigated the risk. The city said, yes, we want this. And then we take it through, we line up our buyer, and then we double close on it at the sale of the transaction. So that's strategy A. Strategy B is where we actually acquire the land. And this is where we've got, again, an end buyer lined up. We don't stick any shovel in the ground until we have our builder contract in place. And that builder is giving us a significant deposit, free money released to help with the development costs. It gets our loan to value and loan to costs very low because they'll give you up to 20% of the purchase price of the land. Not many people know that, to help with some of those development costs. Free, interest free, no money to get it. And that's a huge value add. And then we'll develop those lots and we'll sell the ready to build lots to the builder.
Okay.
And that also increases the value. So like both of those times, like when you exit, when you've got the approval in place, farmland to new housing community, it's worth a lot more. And then when you put the roads and infrastructure in, it's worth a lot more at that stage as well.
How do you normally source your deals?
Everything we do is direct to seller. So we start in the areas that the national home builders are already building. So we're in Nashville, Tennessee. That's where the majority of our deals are done. We know the areas that they're building and we target those specific areas. Now, what do we look for? If anybody's pulled up a GIS map before or a parcel viewer, looks like a bunch of puzzle pieces that all fit together, right? You can see the boundaries of all the individual owners' lots. And we're looking for the developments. Developments are pretty easy to pick out. It's a bunch of tiny little lots around roads, right? We want to go after those big puzzle pieces that are in and around those highly dense, smaller puzzle pieces. So we're going after land that is already around the development. Now, one of the keys to being able to get the density is sewer access. So we're pulling sewer maps for certain areas to make sure that our parcel can access the sewer, because the sewer is what allows us to do a lot of density. If you don't have sewer access, you have to do a step system or a septic system. And that means that the parcel needs to be much larger because you got to have the field lines to disperse the waste from the septic system. So, we're typically not doing that, though we've done deals like that in areas where homes with septic systems are selling. So again, it's all about the national home builders product. If they're building a product that has a step system or a septic system and it's selling and that's what they want, we will deliver that product. But most of the time you want sewer access. This is how you create those like 6,000 square foot lots, which gives you density. This enables us to force appreciate the value of the property significantly, especially with the homeowners that we're dealing with, right? I don't have to do a spray and pray method because our value proposition is so compelling. Hey, Mr. Seller, what do you want for your land? Great. If I could pay you twice that, you be interested in doing a deal with me? You interested in learning more? Great. Here's how I will pay you twice what you're asking, but I need you to go under contract with me for 18 months and I need to get the approvals in place first.
And when you're buying that, what type of earnest money, deposit, whatever you might say, is you're utilizing for a contract like that?
As little as humanly possible. The conversation that I'm having with the seller is we are going to spend a significant amount of money on traffic studies, geotech reports, phase 1 environmental. We're going to have to do the civil drawings on the site. Like I can't afford to pay you $50,000 earnest money deposit, Mr. Seller, because I'm going to give you all these studies that we paid for, and that'll be part of the deposit that you'll get with this. So, I try to get away with $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 earnest money. But the goal is as little as possible by painting that picture. Of course, you can go like, I probably wouldn't put any more than, $50,000 down.
Right.
Do you have money sitting in the stock market and you're worried about it? Or worse, you have money sitting at the bank, not keeping up with inflation? My name is Charles Carillo, founder and managing partner of Harborside Partners. And since 2006, I've been investing my money and my family's money into income producing properties. These are real assets, real properties with real addresses that produce real cash flow. At Harborside Partners, we provide passive investors who love real estate with a turnkey investing solution. If you want to put your money to work in real estate but can't find deals, don't have the time to get funding, and the last thing that Productive People want to do is manage real estate. We find the deals, we fund the deals, and we manage the tenants, the termites, and the properties. Partner with us at investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com. Go to investwithharborside.com. If you love real estate, you like the idea of passive income, and believe that income-producing properties will appreciate over time, go to investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's something you can do too in like a seller financing type deal, that maybe the property needs a lot of work, and you can kind of negotiate down that initial down payment to the seller if you're telling them you're putting so much money into the property over this set period of time, and it just makes their paper better and the deal more secure. And then, showing them everything you're going to do that's one way of really. So I see exactly that can work this way too, where you're showing them all this different value you're adding and money you're putting into the property. So they know you actually have funds and you're actually going to move forward with what you're doing.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So during this process, it seems very, so you're finding infill lots pretty much, right? That's what we're doing. And then with that we have national home buyers that are buying around it, right? And then we're going to go into contract with them. We're going to go direct to seller, direct to owner, let's say at this point, because they're probably not even knowing their sellers yet. During this process, how do you mitigate the risk during land entitlement? So like my thing is that, what happens if you cannot get the land approved for a new housing community, which I think you already said that because it's binding, your contract's binding on that, your purchase sale agreement. But my other part is what happens if you can't sell the land after it's entitled to that builder? I imagine, do you only deal with national home builders, or do you dealing with other like more regional developers as well?
We deal with both. We prefer to work with nationals because they're very well capitalized. If you're working with local builders, you're going to probably run into a financing issue sooner or later with them. We've had that issue. So we prefer to work with national builders. Why? Because it's Wall Street. Wall Street has to make stock price go up. The only way to make stock price go up is to buy and build more. So there's a very, very compelling motivation to perform, and we're getting very significant deposits as well, right? Like this is Wall Street we're dealing with. So we do it for that. As far as the risks, so we've got a community that we run called the Land Development Accelerator, where we teach students. The number one problem I see students who come into our program that have tried to do this is they bought a piece of land thinking they could do development with it, and they couldn't. They went and talked to the city. The city's like, yeah, we'll support this, buy it, go ahead. And then they don't get the approval and they lose a lot of money. That is rule number one. Do not buy anything unless you have all the approvals in place. That's why we structure our contracts like that. So here's how we mitigate the risks. That's risk number one, is the city not approving it. Risk number two is like your builder buyer backing out. So when we put a property under contract, the first thing we do is we create a concept plan, and we've got a pretty good idea on how to calculate, the number of units in the project. We take that concept plan and we go and we meet with the city. We usually go to the planning director, or it will probably be a council person if it's a larger city. And larger cities have different council people that are in charge of the different zip code, the different areas. If it's a smaller suburb, you can probably just go directly to the planning director, and they have a whole council committee that will vote on these things. The planning director is usually the liaison between the council and what the city wants and the developers. So you usually deal with the planning director. There's usually somebody else. We take that concept plan to them and go, hey, do you want this? Is this something that gets excited? Can the council give us, some feedback on this? And while the council's not allowed to be like, yeah, if you submit this, we'll definitely vote on it, but they can say, yes, this is worth your time to submit. Actually, we'd like to see a dog park here, or we want to see some more green space, or we don't want townhomes. We don't like that. We want this. And they can give you some feedback. And if you get a warm and fuzzy, you take that concept plan to your list of national home builders who you've met with and you know what product they want to build, and say, looky what I got. Do you want it? And if you've done your homework, they want it because they're in your area, and they say, yeah, we'll give you a great price for it. And if you like the spread between what you have it under contract with and your offer, that's your okay to take the next step. Your big hurdle that you're trying to get to, I want to spend as little money on this as possible to make sure it's something the city wants and to line up my end buyer. Now, At this point, I'm ready to get a contract in place with the builder and get a deposit that's going to cover my costs if they back out. So if the builder last minute reneges, I get their deposit, it covers my costs. That's how I mitigate the risk. But what you're getting at is a preliminary plat approval, also called a tentative map. So a concept plan is just a piece of paper with some scribbles on it that shows like what the community might look like. You want to get that to a preliminary plat approval. And what that says is the city has approved the development, contingent on seeing the design for it. It's very similar to a city going and saying, hey, we'll issue you a permit to build this house. We just need to see the architectural plans first. In other words, like you 100% can build a house on this piece of land. We just need to approve the architectural plans and make sure it's safe. That's the same thing. Once you have that preliminary plat approval, the city has said, we will approve this. Now, a lot of your risk is gone because they can't just change their mind and be like, you know what, just kidding. We changed our mind and you can't do this. Like they've approved it. Now they want to see what the civil drawings look like. And all those civil drawings is it just shows like the mechanics of the development. So much like architectural plans show what the house is going to look like and how to build the house, the civil drawings are the architectural plans of the ground. You know, how deep the pipe's going to go, you know, where the stormwater is going to drain to. And so that's where you start spending some money at that point is on the civil drawing design. But that's our goal, is to get it to a point where we get the preliminary plat approval. And at that point, you know, we can engage investors and move forward.
How much work do you do physically at the property before it's sold to the builder? Are you taking care of a certain amount of infrastructure before it's sold to that end buyer, the builder?
When we are just getting it entitled and selling it, we don't do any construction work, zero. We're just selling the paper approved development. Now, if we go to phase B where we're delivering lots, that's a different story. But the 3 studies every developer needs to do after they have their builder contract and they've got the okay from the city and you're trying to get a preliminary plat approval, you want to make sure the land is safe. So what would cause the land not to be safe? Well, number one is you need to get an endangered species report, right? Make sure there's no bald eagle nests in the trees that are going to cause any problems. Florida has a lot of endangered species on the land. Tennessee, we're kind of lucky and blessed. I'm gonna knock on wood because I say that and I never had an issue. And then tomorrow I'm going to find out there's something on one of our parcels. The second is a geotech report. This studies the soils to make sure the soils are good, right? Bad soils, imagine if you had nothing but sand, kind of hard to build on sand, right? Make sure the soils are good to build on, and it shows you how much rock there is underneath and if there's any sinkholes. The third is a phase 1 environmental. We want to make sure there's no nuclear barrels buried in the land that can get people sick, right? So those are your 3 big reports that you want to have during your DD period.
Yeah. I think when we talk or when I coach people, I'm always saying everybody's always getting a phase 1. I mean, there should be whatever you're buying, you should always have a phase 1. Even if you're doing like a seller financing deal, most banks are going to require it. If there's no lender involved, it's something that you should always do because you have no idea what was there before. You don't know what's over there. And when you go to refinance it or work through a traditional lender, or when you have a buyer that's going to work through a traditional lender, that's going to be one of the first things that they do on your property. So, it's one of those things that who's ever owning it at that point is now responsible for cleaning it up, which can be very expensive in most situations. So with that being said, can you tell us a little bit? I know you have a GC if you're going to like plan B, phase B, and you're like doing work on the property. But for someone that's just doing land entitlement, can you talk a little bit about what a land development team really consists of completing successful land entitlement deals?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the funny thing is, I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. You're going to need the people to do those 3 reports. And if a lot of the times, if you pick the right civil engineering firm, they might do that in-house or they already have those relations. So your civil engineering firm is the most important party in all of this. I picked a bad civil engineering firm one time. They were off by about 6 inches of dirt removal on 6 acres. So if you can imagine 6 inches of dirt of 6 acres, that's a 7-figure mistake. So your engineering firm is crucial. How do you pick the right civil engineering firm? Go to the city. Ask them who they recommend. Who do they work with a lot? They know the engineers that created plans that are screwed up and having problems and the ones that are good. So just go to the city. Civil engineering is very localized, by the way, very localized because every area is different. How they do it in New York and California and Tennessee are all different. So pick a localized engineer. They're number one. You'll need those studies, right? Your phase 1 environmental, your geotech, and your endangered species. So you'll need those guys. And then it's important to have a good contractor that understands development, that can work with the civil engineer to help design stuff. The civil engineer is going to make something that's super, super pretty and well dressed up, like he's proud of it. And when you look at those plans, you don't know what you're looking at. He might have retaining walls to make some of the areas perfectly flat. When you don't even need a retaining wall, you can just slope it down. So having a good contractor that understands grading and utilities, that can work with the civil engineer to make sure that what he designs is cost efficient, not just really pretty, that's going to be very important as well. And we bring the national builder into the design process. They have to have a say-so because they are the ones buying it. And what you don't want is to design something and get to the end of it and be like, oh, sorry, this doesn't work for us. I'll tell you a quick story. I got a deal a few weeks ago that was sent to me, and it was a 56-unit townhome, and the guy was so excited. It was his first deal. He spent 6 figures to get it approved. Like, I know how much he spent. And he was a successful real estate investor. Like, he obviously had money and had done really well, but just new to development. And I'm looking at it going, hey, these townhomes are 15 feet wide. Who has a 15-foot wide townhome product that they can build? And he wasn't able to sell it. He's stuck with it, and I think he's having to go get it redesigned. So he's going to lose some units. You have to design it with the end product in mind. None of these nationals have a 15-foot wide product. They have an 18-foot, 20, and 22, preferably a 24-foot. And right now, 24-foot's the most popular. Why? Everybody wants 2-car garages. So you got to design it with the end in mind. So that build, all to say this, that builder is important. They're a key part of your end buyer is a key part of your design team.
How does the transaction take place? Are you actually closing on the property and then it's like a double close type thing? So once it's all approved, you're actually closing on it from the land seller, and then you're just same day kind of just bringing it over to and it's getting sold to the builder?
Yeah, we do a double close. It's very simple. When we go to close, we have an investor that puts the money up for the A to B transaction. So us buying it from the seller and then walk into a different room, we do the BC transaction where we sell it to the builder.
Yeah, sounds like a transactional funding, which, okay. Yeah, very normal, especially sometimes with some wholesale deals that have larger spreads. People like doing the double close on. It's a little cleaner than getting some sort of a wholesale deal.
Well, you have to. You have to with these national builders. They've got a lot of regulations they have to abide by with, being a publicly traded company. Everything's got to be very clean.
Yeah. So you kind of glossed over, but you're telling us about your 6 inches of soil over so many different acres. Is that how you lost $1 million on the land deal? Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
No, I only lost a couple $100,000 on that one. No. So my big 7-figure loss came from a deal we did where we did not wait to get all the approvals before we bought it. That's why I can't stress that enough. I've got the scars so you don't have to, essentially. But yeah, we bought a site. We thought we could do something with it. Again, oh yeah, we'll support that. We hear from the city, and civil engineer. Oh yeah, I don't think that's going to cost a whole lot. This is a simple design. No, we ended up getting into something that we couldn't do. Construction costs were just absolutely bonkers because we threw something against what we thought that we were going to be able to do it for a certain price. We couldn't. We didn't get what we wanted, and as a result of that, yeah, it was a hefty loss. So do not buy anything until you have all the approvals, you have your CDs, and you have your budget.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of mistakes about, you had a student that had a 15-foot wide townhouses. What are some other common mistakes you see land investors make, whether it's in, let's say, the entitlement phase? I imagine that's kind of really what we're focusing on talking about, or in any other phase really of the project before it goes out to a builder.
Yeah, those are the big two. The two biggest risks are don't buy it until you have the approvals and you have a budget. If you do that, you've eliminated the majority of the risks that can happen. And then the second is not designing something with the end buyer in mind. If you have your builder locked up and their deposit covers your costs to get it entitled, where if they walk away last minute at the closing table and, you have to renege with your seller and not perform, and so you lose your earnest money and investment, you get the builder's deposit. And that's released to you. So that covers it. If you do that, that's going to eliminate quite a bit of the risk in this. Now there's, anything can happen. It is real estate, but those are the two biggest things, that I see. If you're developing property, you could develop it. And again, the builder could walk away, you get their deposit, and you might have to sit on it for a while, right? Because there's not quite as many buyers that are buying lots like these national home builders do. So that's why it's important to have an iron tight contract. Hire an attorney that specializes in land use and development to go back and forth. We had a lawsuit where we had to sue a builder that didn't perform. That wasn't fun. That was a local builder. It wasn't a national. That was kind of like, hey, do business with nationals, not local guys. And, we spend 8 weeks going back and forth on contracts now with my attorney, their attorney. So having an iron tight contract in place with the builder that's been approved by an attorney is very important. That'll also mitigate a lot of your risk.
Yeah, I have a partner who he does a little similar. It's a little bit of a hybrid approach to what you're doing. So he'll find the land, him and his partners, they will sell the majority of it off to a national home builder, and they will keep a small portion of it to develop their own properties. And so it's one way of really mitigating their risk by taking a lot of, kind of the chips off the table, let's just say. And so they're kind of playing almost with house money on the lots that they're working on. But it's also one of those things too, is the same thing, selling to that national home builder to be able to, have them do their own thing while they can build up their own, where they're really going to make their money, which is on building up those spec houses.
Yeah. And you can slice it and dice it however you want. You can do some pretty unique things with how you structure it with them.
Interesting. One thing that we were talking about before we wrap up, and it was about sourcing deals, and I know you're going direct to seller. And this is interesting because with people, especially in market cycle times, I guess like how you'd say now, where there's a lot of people looking for creative financing, they're going direct to sellers, whether it's for land or whether it's for buying properties. Tell us a little bit about that process. So we identified the property. We have a list of people that we'd want to purchase their property from, their land. What methods are you utilizing? I mean, kind of how, is there any software that you're utilizing to help you? I mean, how does this work? How do you do the reach out? Is it by phone? Is it by mail? Is it by anything else?
We're very old school, and I've been on both sides of it. When we're flipping houses, we're spending $20,000, $30,000 a month on marketing. It was spray and pray. We had a whole boiler room of people answering phones and sales reps going out. And we've done that too. So we're very familiar with marketing, but this is a sniper approach, right? There is no magic software that exists where you can click a couple filter buttons and boom, voila, a magic list of land that is ripe for rezoning and development just pops out. It just doesn't exist because it's pretty localized. So we hand build all of our lists. We're in the areas. We know where the sewer maps are. We know where we want to be, like along those main arteries. We know what the builders want. And we just handpick the lists. We skip trace the phone number and call them. Or we'll go and put a sticky note on their door with a little packet about us. Say, hey, call me. We'll show up. So door knocking and cold calling is currently our main source of deal flow. And I can't stress enough, going and meeting with all the land brokers that are out there that are sourcing these types of deals. Are always, they want buyers that can perform. That's important as well.
Nice. When we're doing direct mailing for smaller multifamily deals, it's one thing that we'll have when we build the list out from the assessor's office with everything. It's one of those things where you kind of like look into every property and be like, this is one I'd want to own. You know what I mean? Because then you're obviously, like you said, the sniper approach where it's like, okay, we're just going to mail every property that's X over this many units, you know what I mean? Or whatever it might be that you're using for your filtering process. So yeah, I like the sniper approach where you're like really hand making those lists, you know what I mean? And you're really focusing to find the properties that are really fitting exactly what your business plan is going to be.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because it is work, but it's a bar that a lot of people don't want. If I told somebody, yeah, you could be a multimillionaire, all you had to do is make 10,000 phone calls. The problem is nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of how it is. You know what I mean? You show everybody, you can bring them to them, but for them doing the work, it's a whole different ball game, which is kind of really the most frustrating thing of coaching people. Found out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. It's amazing. It amazes me how many people will sign up for a program and you put a few weeks of work and then stop. And I'm like, and when I'm on my discovery calls with any potential students, we're very careful about who we allow in the program. We want to make sure they got the right foundation. We do not allow people in. This is your first real estate deal, or, even if you got like a W-2 job, we're very hesitant. It's usually successful real estate entrepreneurs that have done a variety of real estate investments. They've been successful and they want to move into development. We got a lot of land flippers that just want to do larger land deals. And the conversation that I have with them on these calls is, did you go to college? Most people did. All right, great. What'd you major in? Great. How many years? 4. Did you get a master's? Yeah, I did. That was another 3 years. Great. What did you spend on college? Oh my God, between room, board, food, over $100,000. Great. And did you make any money from your college degree in the 4 years while you were getting your bachelor's? Did it pay you anything? No. That was after I got a job. Great. If you treat this program like you treated college, you got up every single day, you went to class, you didn't make any money you'll make money in less than 4 years, but you didn't make any money in 4 years in college. If you have that approach where you have a 4-year goal and you show up and consistently do it every day, you will be successful. Right. So I'm like, if you come into this with the college mentality and say, I'm going to devote X number of years to this, I'm not going to give up, and it's going to cost a fraction of what college costs, you will be successful. That's the mindset that it takes to be successful in development, because you've got to have a certain foundation built. It's going to take me 6 months probably for you to get your first deal under contract. If you're just starting out, a lot of people who join already have deals and they just want to make sure they don't screw them up. So they join. We underwrite and we look at all the deals people got for them. But 6 months, if you've never done it, to get your first deal. And then it's going to be another probably year to 15 months to get that land entitled. We're going to handhold you through it. So a lot of people can't work that long without a big payday, right? And that's what separates people who are successful versus the ones that don't. It's, hey, can you go a year and a half without getting paid to be able to do a deal?
Interesting. As we're wrapping up here, what would you say some of the main factors are contributing to your success over the years, from being medical device sales to having a couple failed ventures to what you're doing now?
People underestimate what they can do in a year and they overestimate what they can do in a day. Consistency in this business is key, and it takes time. Doing the same thing for 5-10 years is what's it's going to compound your success. So when you're setting out to build something, you really need to set a 10-year goal with it, because 10 years is really where I see people just absolutely take off and have built something that's absolutely amazing. So, and through the process, it doesn't look like you're changing that much. I compare it to a book I read. He talks about putting a blue drop in a 5-gallon bucket every day. Like, you put that little blue drop in it and you don't really see much change in the bucket, but you do it every day. And over the year, like, the bucket's just bright blue, right? But you don't see the changes every single day. So consistency is probably the main thing, I would say. The consistency and discipline to keep doing it.
Right. Okay. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How can our listeners learn more about HBG Capital and then also your training program?
Yeah, we serve two people. If you are an investor that wants to invest in this type of stuff, you can go to hbgcapital.net. There's a free book we've got called 100 Questions Business Owners Ask Before Investing. If you want to watch a video on what we do, you can go to hbgcapital.net/waitlist. You can grab all the free stuff there. And then if you want to learn how to do these, if you are someone who wants to get into development, whether that's building houses or land development or land entitlement, and you're not really sure where to start, go to learnlanddevelopment.com. We have a free course called Land Development 101. Go grab it. It teaches you how to go and find the stuff that we're talking about today, land that's right for development potential. And then also how to raise the money for it is also built into that course. So it's completely free. You can go there and you can grab it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all that information. We'll put those links into the show notes, and looking forward to connecting with you here in the near future.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars, LLC exclusively.